Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the finals of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. I'm Nadia, I'll be your MC for this exciting event. Now, in partnership with Singapore Management University's Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the DBS Foundation is giving away the inaugural DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize at the 10th Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Competition. And in the next 15 minutes, we're going to be spending some time getting to know our top 4 finalists. You may already notice there's a Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. That's where you can leave any well wishes you have, any questions that you have for the team, and you can also vote for your favorite team on the bottom of your screen through the People's Choice category. Voting will remain open until 1 p.m. Singapore time, so just about an hour left. And now let's invite our top 4 finalists online. First up, from China, we have Li Teng representing Bluffer. From Indonesia, we have Faisal representing Sampangan. From Singapore, we have Siddharth representing Polyb. And also from Singapore, we have Anthony representing Stratificate. And our teams have truly come a long way. They beat nearly 800 applicants online to be here today. So let's all give them our virtual support and cheer them on because they truly deserve it. Well done, everyone. And for starters, I think we're going to play a little game, right? It'll be nice to get to know the teams. This one is called Two Truths and a Lie. So for those tuning in, you may notice there's a poll that's gone live on the right side of your screen with 3 statements. All you need to do is vote for the one which you think is a lie. So let's get started. Let's begin the poll. For Bluffer, first statement. The average age of the Bluffer team was under 30 years old at the end of 2019. Second statement, over 30% of the Bluffer team received their PhD degree before the end of 2019. And third statement, Bluffer was established in 2016 and spun off from Peking University. And for Sampangan, Statement 1, the technology to convert landfill waste to active carbon required 15 years of research. Statement 2, 2 of the 4 founders are father and son. Statement 3, Magic Box is based on an incinerator technology. For Polyb, Statement 1, everyone at Polyb is an experienced drone pilot in both indoor and outdoor environments. Statement 2, Polyb was initially a side project named Hummingbee, which proposed the use of flapping wing drone technology developed at NUS, that's a university in Singapore. Statement 3, the idea came about after watching the Black Mirror episode, Hated in the Nation, where in a post-bee apocalyptic world, artificial bee drones are hacked to massacre people. And for Stratificate, Statement 1, only 1 ml of blood from the patient is required to perform their severe dengue prediction test. Statement 2, including their advisors, the Stratificate team originated from 6 different countries across Asia, Oceania, and North America. And Statement 3, 30% of the Stratificate team is made up of women. Cool, so now it is time to uncover the truth, starting with Bluffer. The lie was that Bluffer was established in 2016 and spun off from Peking University. Li Teng, share with us what the truth actually is.
Yeah, that's right. So we are a young team that under 80 years, 30 years old.
Oh, awesome, awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Li Teng. And now over to Sampangan. The lie is that their product, Magic Box, is based on an incinerator technology. Magic Box is such a cool name, Faisal. So can you tell us what this technology really is?
Yeah, so basically we can process any kinds of waste using a technology that does not involve burning waste, but use heat radiation. I will explain more later.
Ooh, okay, I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Faisal. And now to Polyb. So Polyb's idea was most definitely not inspired from the Black Mirror episode Hated in the Nation. I'm gotta say I'm a little disappointed because I loved that episode, right? So Siddharth, what is the truth?
So, I put this in because we get it very often from folks. Is that how it all started? The truth is no. And I think the way Polyb came about is through a series of serendipitous events. And largely thanks to the ecosystem that NU has created here for researchers. So I would say it was a very gradual and non-dramatic development. It wasn't a eureka moment after watching this episode.
Okay, amazing. Good to know there, Siddharth. Thank you so much. And now, Stratificate. The lie was that 30% of the Stratificate team is made up of women. So Anthony, tell us what the gender makeup in the team is then.
The actual gender makeup is that there's 30% of the team is actually made up of men. So we are really like the opposite, whereby everybody's pushing to have more female founders. We have actually very few like male founders and male like people in the team. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, women going to take over the world, right, Anthony? Okay, thank you so much to our team. Super, super interesting stuff. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to officially kick off the finals of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. And let's get started by taking a quick walk down memory lane to see how far our teams have come.
Thank you all so much.
We are very excited to work on.
We purposefully create opportunities for spillover effects, for social impact and social value.
How can it be that today it's already 2020 and the most common solutions for 253 million partially sighted guide dog?
What we are trying to solve here by providing a very accurate prediction of the disease outcome for dengue.
The plastic pollution is one of the biggest challenges the world are facing, and the one that we are able to solve based on our technologies.
People talk about the circular economy, but maybe we should be thinking about more of like a spherical economy where one industry's waste is another industry's valuable product, not just the same industry.
I see a lot of collaboration opportunities here just through this one cohort, and I'm super excited about it.
How much more efficient would your solution be? Is it faster? Is it cheaper?
So there is a compelling reason to push for that. After you diagnose it, what is next?
The business model of this effort you're running. How are you sustaining yourself from a financial cost standpoint?
Help the world government save $4.5 billion of healthcare costs. We can actually contribute to urban food security in the truest sense of the word.
So we can take in any kinds of waste and convert them into products.
Whether it's an environment, whether it's a social problem, you have taken it head on, and I'm sure that all of you will be able to take us onto a better world in the future.
What a journey. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the finals of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. I'm Nadia. I'll be your host for this exciting event. In partnership with Singapore Management University's Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the DBS Foundation is giving away the inaugural DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize at the 10th Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Competition. And through this, we hope to find the most innovative, sustainable, and scalable business solutions that can help address crucial social and environmental issues. And the top prize will be given to the idea or early stage startup that has the potential to make the highest social impact. This award is worth $150,000. This includes up to $100,000 in prize money, as well as post-competition support, so that's through marketing, brand awareness, network access, etc. I'd like to now invite Claire Wong, the head of the DBS Foundation, to share a little bit more about this event.
A very warm welcome to everyone joining us today for the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize Finals as part of the Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Competition. When DBS Foundation and the Singapore Management University first envisioned this event, we thought we'd be able to all come together and celebrate the efforts of the startups. Even though this scenario has changed dramatically in the past year, it is clear to us that the needs of the people around us have only become more evident, making this prize even more significant and timely. In the past year, we've been very privileged and humbled to journey with many entrepreneurs that we work with in this region, whose communities have been very challenged by COVID-19. It's been very heartening to see them step up in so many ways, creating innovative solutions, ideas with their businesses to uphold lives and livelihoods and really protect the people that they are serving. Three Dots, for example, here in Singapore, they have worked with DBS and the Food Bank to create a virtual food banking platform to be able to more effectively connect donors and beneficiaries to provide meals right here. Another social enterprise we work with, a former grantee of 2019, Reach 52, they created chatbots to be able to provide healthcare information to communities in multiple languages across the region. These are just some of the many social enterprises that we've worked with in the past year that have really inspired me, and these are all really reminders to me that businesses really have a huge, immense opportunity to be able to create solutions that really impact people, that are relevant, and businesses have to do this quickly as the world around us is fast changing. And the entrepreneurs that you've just met and you will continue to meet today are going to do just that. And they have a passion to change the status quo, not to be satisfied with just looking at the amounts of waste and pollution that is around us, but to really change that. One of them told me that his passion, when he visits any city, he visits the landfills, and he even enticed us to do the same. That's the zeal that these entrepreneurs have. DBS Foundation was started in 2014 to champion social entrepreneurship. We believe that businesses of the future must have purpose at the center, and businesses need to care not just about a profit bottom line, but also the impact, social impact and environmental impact that they have. So all four teams today have begun this challenging, potentially sleepless, exciting journey, and we're glad to be part of this journey with them. So we wish the four finalists all the very best today. Join me in cheering with them. Without further ado, over to you, Nadia.
Thank you so much, Claire, and I completely agree with you. Our top four finalists today are absolutely impressive, and get this, they beat almost 800 applications from 650 universities worldwide, and in the next 2 hours, they will be battling it out to see who will win the top prize. So let's introduce them now. First up, we have Bluffer from China. So Li Teng and his team are aiming to fight plastic pollution by introducing a more sustainable and biodegradable alternative to everyday products. Welcome, Bluffer. Next, from Indonesia, we have Sampangan. So Faisal and his team are truly embracing the philosophies of a circular economy in their technology by turning landfill waste into material that's essentially better for the environment. Welcome, Sampangan. From Singapore, we have Polyb. So Siddharth and his team are aiming to strengthen food security in urban cities by automating the process of pollination with the use of mini drones. Welcome, Polyb. And also from Singapore, Stratificate. Anthony and his co-founders are developing the world's first severe dengue prediction test kit, and one key aim of this is to help reduce the issue of overcapacity in hospitals. So absolutely amazing stuff. You must all be so filled with adrenaline. I hope you managed to get some sleep last night. Let's check in with Bluffer first. How are you feeling?
Wow, I feel excited. And I'm now in China, in Beijing, so greeting from Beijing. So yes, actually we have started our business for 4 years, and it's a long journey, and we will fight for the final goal.
Absolutely. And now let's check in with Sampangan. How are you feeling? You look extremely excited there.
Oh yes, definitely super excited. Like I can hardly sleep last night, to be honest. But so glad to be here. Thank you so much for DBS Foundation.
Awesome. I also could hardly sleep last night because I was so excited to meet all four of you. And over to Polyb. So Siddharth, what is one interesting thing that you would like people to know about your work?
Yeah, so I think, generally speaking, what I've really noticed in the past few years is that we haven't paid so much attention to where our food comes from and, how we grow it and how resource intensive it is. And I was one of those folks, not too long ago. But when I started looking into these, really deep-rooted problems is when, everything about Polyb came together. So what I would say is, it's just sort of, directing that curiosity towards, finding out where your food comes from can be really rewarding, not just for your own health, but you might find so many exciting problems to address. So I think that's been my takeaway in the past few years working on Polyb.
Awesome, thanks Siddharth. And finally, Stratificate, same question. What is one interesting thing that you want people to know about your work?
Well, I guess most people feel that dengue is a very scary thing. You don't really know how it will turn out, whether or not a patient will go into the severe form of the disease. But we've actually come up with a technology that's able to do that, and we really hope that we can help change the perception of the disease to something that's just like a flu. When you get it, then most of you will just recover. Yep.
All right, thank you so much, teams. That was fantastic. And now it is my privilege to introduce our very, very impressive panel of judges today who altogether bring decades worth of experience to this event, starting with Sushan. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you all here today. So Sushan is she's going to be leading our panel of judges. She's the group head of institutional banking here at DBS and a veteran banker. And Sushan previously led DBS's regional wealth management, and consumer banking business for nearly a decade, and her many, many, many accolades include being in 2018 nominated by Forbes magazine as a top 25 emerging Asian women business leader. So Sushan, what do you think it is important for us, especially in the midst of a global pandemic, to support purpose-driven startups?
So, startups are the big companies of the future, right? At least the successful ones are. And I really think that going forward, customers and stakeholders and shareholders are going to be intolerant of companies that are not doing well and doing good at the same time. So I like to think that doing good is synonymous to doing business, and being sustainable lies in the crux of everything we do. And so that's why the startup of today, who has ambitions to be sustainable and successful tomorrow, should really have impact, sustainability, and long-term goals in mind.
Thank you so much, Sushan. And our next judge is Nick Nash. So he is the managing partner and co-founder at Asia Partners. So that is a growth equity firm focused on technology and technology-enabled companies that are transformative to Southeast Asia, right? So prior to Asia Partners, Nick was the group president of Sea. That's a leading internet company in Southeast Asia with a market cap of US $50 billion. And Nick led Sea to raise its landmark IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. In fact, that was the largest ever US IPO, of a company from this region. So Nick, with all this incredible experience, what are some of the things that you're going to be looking out for today to determine the winner?
Well, first of all, let me just tell all of the finalists how tough today is going to be for the three of us. All of you are extraordinary, and what you're doing is so important. I'll just share something that's always in the back of my mind when I talk to entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs. All of you have tremendous passion for what you're doing. You're doing important things. I've come to realize as the years go by that what's even more important than being passionate is being passionate about what you're really, really good at, what you're skilled at. So I'd love to really spend some time today understanding more about what makes each of you uniquely skilled to take your companies to a very special level of success.
Thank you very much, Nick. And our third and final judge is Kwek Siu-Rei. He is the group CEO and co-founder at Carousel. So I'm going to share a little backstory on your behalf here, okay, Siu-Rei? Siu-Rei actually dropped out of his honors year to start Carousel. And as many of us would know now, it is a household name in the region. And despite being the youngest on our panel of judges, Siu-Rei is leading one of the world's largest and fastest growing marketplaces in Southeast Asia, Taiwan, and Hong Kong with over 250 million listings. But most importantly, Siu-Rei is actually using technology to help the community. So Siu-Rei, what is one message that you have for our teams today, as well as to our young audience tuning in?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, huge congratulations to all the finalists. You know, I guess coming this far in such a prestigious competition is just, I guess, testament to the problem that you're solving that's such a meaningful one and with such a huge potential for impact, right? So regardless of the outcome, I really hope that you stay focused on the mission, stay focused on the problem that you're solving, especially if you care so deeply about it. Like, go all out and make it happen. And I guess I just want everyone to know that you should not and should never ever underestimate what a deep sense of mission or purpose can do in your journey to make an impact, right? Because for sure, the journey will be an extremely difficult one. You'll be plagued with challenges, naysayers, but you know, your mission, your purpose will keep you going, and you know, I think the world deserves the impact that you're going to make going forward.
Thank you so much, Siu-Rei. And to our lovely viewers tuning in today, please be reminded that you can still vote for your favorite team under the People's Choice category at the bottom of your screen. Voting will remain open until 1 p.m. Singapore time. And on that note, let's dive straight into the part that we've all been waiting for. Our top 4 finalists will now pitch their ideas for the top prize. The format will be a 5-minute pitch, followed by a 5-minute Q&A from our judges. And for those tuning in, please feel free to show your support, leave your well wishes for the teams in the chat panel. All right, so I think it is time for us to get started. First up, we have Lee Teng from Bluffer. Your time starts now.
Okay, thanks. So exciting. Hello, my name is Lee Teng. I'm the co-founder and the president of Bluffer. Let me share the story of Bluffer. So the reason why we established this company is try to solve the problem of plastic waste, maybe one of the most important issues on the planet now. And we believe that we have found the final solution of this problem. But interestingly, the solution is not an innovation in material sense, but an innovation in biosense. So that is because we think the solution is hidden in tiny creatures on the planet, that is microorganisms. So people are using microorganisms for thousands of years. We use them to produce beer, bread, yogurt, and recently antibiotics, insulins. And you can regard microorganism as a tiny factory that with extremely high efficiency. And recent years, we are able to, because of the development of life science, we are able to design the factory in its DNA level. So that is what we do. So we design microorganisms to produce a kind of natural polymer called PHA. And it's quite a unique polymer because PHA is a kind of natural polymer, but has the similar properties with traditional plastic. So if you look at the industry of traditional plastic, you will find that it came from fossil oil and using a chemical engineering process to produce. And most importantly, it cannot degrade after use. So that caused the problem of plastic waste. So what we do is that PHA, on the other hand, is using a fermentation process, just like the way we produce beer. And we use sustainable feedstocks to feed the microorganism. For example, like cornstarch or palm oil use. And most importantly, it is 100% biodegradable after use. So you can see the whole process is a carbon neutral one. And it's a biodegradable, zero waste one. So the life cycle of PHA is quite simple one. So we're using a fermentation process just like we produce beer, and then we purify it into a pellet and then into a final product, for example, a bottom. And the bottom, when you use it, you throw it away, it will degrade in 3 months. So the whole process, you don't need any further treatment. So based on this technology, we built our pilot scale production facility in China, and we are expanding it to 5,000 tons per year. It will finish within next year. And we are planning to further expand it to about 100,000 tons per year. One of the key issues for PHA's commercialization is its production cost. So we are trying to reduce the cost systematically based on our innovations in life science and the scaling up of our production capacity. It is now still higher than traditional plastic, but it will soon, in the near future, at the same level with traditional plastic. And the application of PHA, just like plastic, has various types like bags, tablewares, textiles. And PHA is a perfect case combining social impact and commercial opportunities, because the global market size of PHA could be extremely huge, and it is expanding fast. And finally, I want to talk a little bit beyond bioplastic, because we believe that microorganism is so powerful that it can not only produce bioplastic, but also all petrol-based chemicals. So that means all the problems we have because of unsustainabilities because of petrochemicals can be solved maybe using these tiny creatures. So what we do in Bluffer is we try to unleash the hidden power of microorganisms or microbes to use them to produce biopolymers, bioplastics, or biochemicals. So that's what we do. That is the story of Bluffer. Thank you.
All right, time's up. Judges, Q&A, please start.
Wow, unleashing the power of microbes. I love it that you said that you are leveraging the efficiency of these, microorganisms. I have in my mind a picture of like gazillion, micro factories creating the sea of biodegradable plastic. My question to you is, you talked about scale and cost, which was my question. I could see that you've done the, your first proof of concept in Shandong. How long do you think it will take you to reach the kind of scale and reduce the cost of production to a point where it can replace traditional plastic? And how much effort will have to go into that?
Oh, okay. We have basically a calculation that if we want to reach the similar cost with traditional plastic, roughly we need about 5 to 10 years with a production capacity of about 100,000 tons per year. So that's not a very big amount if you compare it with traditional plastic production capacity, but it takes some time. I think it will happen soon, and it takes a lot of efforts. For example, we have a pilot plant running now, and we have our next phase of 5,000 tons per year finished within next year, and then we need 2 more stages to reach that goal. So it takes like five years roughly.
Okay.
Haley, no, great concept. It's really fascinating what you guys are doing. Just on the roadmap to commercialization and that grand impact that you like to make, I'd love to understand, in next year you mentioned that you guys will get to 5,000 tons in production capacity, and then you're scaling this up to 100,000 tons. Like, where's the demand for your PHA going to come from? Like, do you have a customer segment that's already in mind for your team to go after? Especially, ultimately you can produce it, but what's that use case that's going to be the killer app for Bluffer?
Okay, so we have several customers that are brand owners globally, and the applications is roughly first of all, the applications are all single-use plastics. Okay, and it's roughly into two categories. First one is rigid packaging. The second one is flexible packagings. But both of them are packaging materials. So the kitting apps of PHA will be packaging materials, either rigid or flexible ones, for different consumer goods, for different types. So that's the quick answer. And for any of us single applications, the market are huge. So 5,000 tons is quite tiny one. Yeah. So even our factory are not finished yet, but the demand is even beyond that. So we have a calculation that, for example, 1% of consumers of plastic now is about 4 million tons per year. So 4 million tons per year compared with 5,000 tons per year, that's a huge gap. That's all our opportunities, and we need more works on this.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe just a quick follow-up question to that, right? Just very quick one. Has there been any, brand owners who have really, expressed interest to buy your PHA instead of, the competitor products and alternatives that they already have?
Yeah, sure. One of the biggest food companies and consumer goods companies, both of them are our customers or potential customers, and we have great connections with them. And actually, PHA is not a new material. That there are several companies that are producing PHAs, and they are all expanding. And the most important thing is that from brand owners to customers, all of them are quite interested in PHA. That's a very clear signal from the market. And our advantage is that we can reduce the cost systematically because innovations in life science that we can reduce the cost to an extremely low level. So further expand these applications.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, judges. Next up, we have Fauzal from Sampangan. Your time starts now.
Hi everyone, my name is Fauzal. I'm from Sampangan, Indonesia. We are here to solve the world waste crisis using a magic box. And in the next few minutes, I'll share you how we're going to do it. So at the moment, we are in a really serious waste crisis. We are producing millions of waste every single year, and most of that it ends up in the landfill, or it leaks into the air by burning, or even like it ends up in the ocean, eaten by the fishes, which at the end of the day, we eat ourselves. So we need to do something, and we need to do something now. So, but basically, the whole reason why all of this thing is happening is because of one single thing, which is we basically just produce more than what we can process. And this is what the waste ecosystem looks like, not just in Indonesia, but also other parts of the world. So from manufacturer goes into our household in which we consume, and then the waste will be transported to the temporary landfill, and at the day, go back to the landfill. Here are some interesting problems that we've discovered in this ecosystem at the moment. Number one, the leakage to the environment from house into the landfill is actually 55%. So that means like 55% of waste generated daily ends up either in the ocean or being burnt, which is crazy, right? And then there's limited amount of waste collection infrastructure, especially in Indonesia. Landfills are all over capacity and have very low environment safety standard. And worst of all, bad waste smell across the value chain, from our house up to the final landfill. Let me show you an example of a project that we've deployed with one of the local government in Indonesia. Yeah, so basically that's one of our sites in Serang City, Banten, Indonesia. And this is what the magic box looks like. It's a capacity of 10 tons per day. So we can process tons per day. We can process all kinds of waste, plastic, organic, toxic, anything. It goes in, and then we use heat radiation, which is not burning, which means no pollution. And then the technology is already sustainable, certified by the ministry. It can be scaled up really easily depending on the amount of waste that need to be processed. And most importantly, whatever comes in, we can create products that can be used in circular economy. So in a nutshell, the magic box main superpowers falls into this 4 categories. We could enable same day zero waste, so no more waste created on a daily basis. Decentralized waste management, process existing waste that have been in the landfill for years, and most importantly, convert any kinds of waste into circular economy. So in Sampangan, we make sure that no waste is wasted because we make sure that everything goes back into the production, either in organic farming or even healthcare for biodisinfectant. This is our portfolio. Like we've been around for like around 2 years, and we've deployed around 18 magic boxes across 7 provinces, with our main client being a government as well as businesses. And these are the impacts that we've been measuring in terms of waste process, carbon dioxide we've captured, and farmers' productivity. And these are financial growth. So we've grown at least like around 4 or 5x despite of the COVID-19 situation. We've hoped to grow our operation a bit more by next year. These are the list of the team. My background is computer science and banking. We have our chief scientist, Dr. Ishani, and our 2 other partners from multiple backgrounds. That is like really amazing. So these are our supporting partners from Impact Hub, Accelerate 2030, International Trade Center, partners from Brazil and West Sumatra, as well as UNDP. These are the support that we needed to level up our impact, which is navigating certifications, deploying more pilots, and collaboration with the ecosystem. And some internet recognition that we have from Geneva and some other parts of the world. And yeah, so the waste crisis is real, and we need to do something now at scale, and let's do something together.
All right, time's up. Judges, Q&A, please start.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fauzo. Selamat pagi to you. Thank you for joining us from Indonesia. I have a very fundamental question. You're using science to solve a very important problem, but the science of fire and heat, thermodynamics, is a pretty mature field. We've had fire for a few thousand years now. What was it about this kind of technology that led it to be underappreciated or under-commercialized for so long until you came?
So the world knows incineration, and that's like been used for like a lot of years, right? So that's basically the incumbent. But now, like we are in the era of the new phase of technology, which is a combination of pyrolysis and gasification, which means we are decomposing waste using heat radiation instead of fire. So imagine a rice cooker, and that's exactly how it works. So we don't burn rice, but we use heat radiation to decompose the rice, and if it goes further, then it will become activated carbon, and that's basically the concept that we use in our technology. So it's an emerging technology, and as we've traveled the world to share about the things that we do, people agree that this is one of the best way and more scalable way for us to solve the existing waste that already been here for so long and the waste that is created on the daily basis. So that's what we're striving for.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Charles. A very, very magical presentation, I must say. You know, I really think this is, you're onto something really, really meaningful. And I can imagine even land scarce place like Singapore needing a solution like this. You know, we're going to run out of landfill space at some point. I guess the question here is, how do you make this impact at scale? You know, the magic box actually looks pretty, I guess, bulky. It looks quite expensive to build, to deploy. Like, what's the unit economics behind it, right? How much does it take to produce one? How long does it take? What's the payback period for someone who wants to deploy a magic box? Like, how do you get this out to thousands of locations, if not 1 million locations at some point, to make the, I guess, the impact that this idea actually has the potential to?
Yep, thank you so much for the question. So I think there's 3 points. Number one is we manufacture the technology ourselves. So, and the technology is ready to scale in a sense of, if we were to, for example, we have like 20 tons of waste operation at the moment in one of the site. And let's say we're signing a 450 tons per day deal, hopefully by this year. So it's just a matter of scaling up manufacturing capability, and then just simply deploying more pilots so that we could close deals with both B2G as well as B2B. So in terms of unit economics of the machine, since we are manufacturing it ourselves, so we really control the cost. And the break-even point for one single machine is less than 2 years. And that's on the worst case scenario where we only, the main business model is just waste processing fee. However, the next stage of the business is actually the products that is being created that is deployed in other industries, such as agriculture and multiple other industries. So, and at the moment, we're actually at a point of we are low on supply of waste because there's like pipelines of contracts waiting for us to scale our waste operations so that we could create enough activated carbon to supply for organic agriculture, for example. So right now, it's just a matter of deploying more and then like finding the right kind of financing that can help us to scale up the operations that we have.
Fazil, there's one rule of entrepreneurship that never gets broken. There's no limit to your success if you're making other people money. So tell me about the ecosystem you're going to build around your business on the supply side and then downstream. And how do you get those people to make tons and tons of money around you?
So waste is a very, very interesting ecosystem. The first one, on the supply side, we have 3 segments. The first one is municipalities. So it's like working with the governments for the landfills, working with real estate managers, as industrial areas, etc. On the other hand, we also have agriculture segment in which we can convert agricultural waste into high-value activated carbon that can be reused again into their ecosystem. And the third one, which is a very high margin but low volume waste, which is like the hospital waste, in which we could also solve the exact same problems with the same magic box. So that's on the supply side. On the demand side, there's organic agriculture. In Indonesia itself, there's like millions of hectares of agricultural land that is that can be scaled up using activated carbon because we can help them to increase yield and reduce cost. Plus organic certified, which means higher margin.
Awesome.
So,
thank you so much, Fazil.
There's so many more industries as well.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but our time is up. Judges, thank you so much for those questions. Next, we have Siddharth from Polyb. Your time starts now.
Hi, I'm Siddharth, and at Polyb, we are building micro drones to automate pollination and crop monitoring in indoor agriculture. Now, globally, greenhouses and vertical farms are growing at a breakneck speed. Indoor farming really allows us to increase productivity by orders of magnitude with more control on the inputs. Now, if there's any region which is best suited to build indoor farms, it is urban areas where nearly 2/3 of the global population will live by 2040. And if there's anything that we can grow and must grow in indoor farms, it is fruits and vegetables because there's a global deficit. Majority of the world's countries, which you can see in blue color on this map, have insufficient supply of fresh fruits and vegetables for a healthy diet. And there are severe losses in the supply chain because the shelf life is very short. So to borrow the jargon of some growers, at the end of the day, it all tastes like cardboard. And through this pandemic, we have learned that it is imperative to grow these crops locally. Now, some of the biggest crops by market size grown in greenhouses are tomatoes, pepper, eggplant, and berry crops. And they all need bumblebees for pollination. Now, while a typical high-tech Dutch greenhouse may have easy access to bumblebees even if they're expensive, majority of the world's urban areas do not. The only alternative is manual pollination, which is expensive and inefficient. It's just not something that we have evolved to do. Can you imagine yourself pollinating 20,000 flowers on a hot day? There's workers doing that as we speak in countries like Australia, where there are no bumblebees. Even in vertical farming, pollination is the biggest bottleneck for the industry to produce more high-value fruit crops. And that's because bees cannot navigate without UV light, which is absent indoors. So here's our thesis. The full potential of indoor farms cannot be realized unless flowers are pollinated autonomously, precisely, and at the right time. And it is drones that can do this at scale. And for this very reason, we have built our core technology around automation of micro drones. These can fit on your palm and fly within a centimeter's accuracy, which is an essential capability for precision pollination. We will be offering pollination as a service to indoor farming companies for two main reasons. Number one is that it eases adoption for our customers. And number two, it allows us to iterate on our solutions. Now, there's two main metrics to evaluate pollination. And the first is fruit set rate, which is the fraction of flowers that end up turning into any kind of fruit. And we're already at 90%, which is comparable to bee pollination. The other metric is marketable fruit set rate, which is the fraction of fruits that actually make it to the grocery shelves. Now, what is really underappreciated is the role of pollination in fruit quality. Pollination is a non-binary process. There are several female parts per flower, and the higher the number of pollinated female parts there are in a flower, the better will be the quality of the fruit. Now, our target is to help growers achieve a higher marketable fruit set rate of 80%. And we're very well on track to do that. You don't have to take my word for it. Because last year, we successfully completed joint pilots with the Singapore Food Agency, the Statutory Board for Agriculture. Seeing the promise of our technology, the Temasek Foundation chose to back us. When we look back 10 years from now, it will only seem natural and obvious that the world's first scalable solution for artificial pollination was invented right here in Singapore, a nation which had to grow its own food in uncertain times, and a nation where adversity is seen as an opportunity. Now, here's the impact we're looking to make in the next 2 years. With our technology, indoor farms in urban areas can grow 3 different types of crops, which are the biggest in market size. Based on our pilot studies advised by horticulture experts, we have reason to believe that our solution can increase yields for these crops by up to 50% as compared to manual pollination. We've experienced a very strong market pull so far. Pollination is also the backbone of the $50 billion seeds industry, which almost entirely hinges on manual pollination for seed production. We've already completed a pilot trial with the Fortune 500 seed company and are working on follow-up contracts. We have 5 other pilot trials lined up with greenhouses, vertical farms, and top seed companies across the globe. Now, with the prize money, we can accelerate the development of pollination for tomato and pepper crops. And we'll do this by expanding our team and setting up new test beds in Singapore. Polyb is on a mission to enhance food security, and precision horticulture is only our first step. Thank you very much.
I certainly do not like fruits that taste like cardboard. So I think you guys are on to something very special. I guess I'd love to understand what you and team's ambitions are, right? How big do you guys think your impact can be over the next, say, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Sure. Thanks for your question. The way we look at it is, we are enablers for growers, right? What we see ourselves as a company which provides precision horticulture services of which pollination is a big part and is the first critical step. The biggest impact that we see ourselves making is in the control environment agriculture sector. And that's, for a variety of reasons. Number one is that is the sector which is growing the fastest. That's where the growth lies. Second is that the problem of pollination is most pronounced in the control environment agriculture sector. So that's a great fit for us in terms of, the core technology that we have and the urgent nature of the problem. So that's the second reason. And lastly, it basically is also a part of our go-to-market strategy, because control environments are a better place for us to start, where we can iterate our technology, make it more robust, and then maybe look at more challenging problems of pollination in other sectors, such as, let's say, perennial crops, orchard crops. So as such, if you ask me, in terms of impact, pollination is such a huge problem. A third of the global agricultural production depends on it, right? So in fact, the problem is so big, one single company like Polyb cannot solve it. We're rooting for all the companies who are looking at this problem now and are now looking at, other areas for pollination, and especially in orchard crops. But we are focused on control environment agriculture because, we think that's the right go-to-market strategy, and that's the best place to get started for our technology.
Siddharth, this is just incredibly cool and so timely given the growth of urban farming. And close to my heart, my family and I are big gardeners, and just 2 days ago I used a Q-tip to manually pollinate our passion fruit flowers. So I totally get how time-consuming this stuff is. I've got a simple question for you.
Sure.
The science and the technology are obviously very important here, but every good entrepreneur learns to sell. Tell me about a sale that you didn't close in the last 6 months, how painful it was, and what you learned about how you could be better at selling.
Wow, that is such an excellent question. I wish I got more of those often. So this was recently, in the past few months, wherein we were looking to execute a pilot trial with a seed company. And this was overseas in the States, and we had actually been talking about it for a while, but then the pandemic struck and we could not travel to execute the pilot trial. So we were looking to convince the customers that, let's give it a go. Let's try this remotely. We will ship you all the equipment. We will prepare a standard operational procedure for you to deploy the drones and collect all the information that we need. And after that, we'll take care of it. Once the data is collected and once we can start iterating on that front, we can make progress anyway. But, it was very hard to convince them that the remote pilot trial can actually work out. And understandably so, because we're in this scenario, probably for the first time in our lifetimes, and it was what we had imagined in terms of execution was going to be really different. We're going to run into a lot of challenges, and quite frankly, doing it remotely was going to be a massive risk, since they were covering the cost for it. So at the end of the day, where we probably failed to completely convince them was that the pilot trial could be done remotely. But we do take that as a fantastic lesson, as to how to try and be on our toes, try to improvise, at least be prepared, right? What we did at the very least was we were prepared to deploy it remotely and ship the equipment and prepare the operational procedure. So at least it gave us a mental model on how do we do these kind of pilots in the future if need be.
Well, I guess maybe Siddharth, we'd love to hear at least what do you think are some of the critical success factors that are in the way in the next 6 to 12 months that you need to resolve? I guess in other words, like how can people help, increase the chances of success for Polyb?
Right, so I think the first step for us when engaging with customers is doing a pilot trial. And the main reason for that is we want to validate our unit economics, because the world hasn't really seen a fully autonomous solution for a problem like pollination. And while we're quite confident about our technology and how it's going to pan out, but we still have to validate unit economics given the fragmented nature of agriculture. So that's our very first step in the next few months.
All right, thank you, Siddharth, and thank you, judges. Finally, Anthony from Stratificate. Your time starts now.
Hi everybody, I'm Anthony. I'm co-founder of Stratificate. Meet little Avinash. Avinash was infected with dengue. His parents brought him to 5 different hospitals, but all of them rejected him because all their hospital beds were taken up by dengue patients. So in the end, little Avinash developed dengue shock syndrome, multiple organ failure, and eventually passed away. His parents were so devastated that they committed suicide. Regrettably, this whole tragedy can actually be avoided because up to 2/3 of all the hospitalized dengue patients actually can recover on their own back home. If you were to look at one of the poorer cities in Indonesia, Yogyakarta, for a patient to be managed as a dengue outpatient, it only costs $7. Whereas if the patient were to be unnecessarily hospitalized, it will cost up to $223, which is near to a month of the salary of an average Indonesian. Every year, 390 million people are infected with dengue, and up to 57 million of them are hospitalized. Just imagine the amount of wastage in terms of healthcare resources. Presenting Stratificate, the world's first severe dengue prediction test. When diagnosed dengue patients are tested to be not at risk of developing severe dengue, they can be managed as an outpatient, and this will significantly help to reduce their healthcare costs. And if they are tested to be at risk of developing severe dengue, they can be immediately hospitalized. And the now less overwhelmed doctors and nurses will be able to provide closer clinical monitoring and more aggressive supportive treatments. We estimate that Stratificate can help the world's dengue-impacted developing countries save some $4.5 billion of healthcare costs every year. Currently, most hospitals are following WHO guidelines, which is only 20 to 25% specific. Our potential direct competitors are using biomarker technology that's between 0 to 79% specific. Our Stratificate blood test is 97% specific. We've designed Stratificate with developing countries in mind such that even for the laboratories with the most basic setup, they will be able to run the test. Our development facility is also ISO 13485 certified, meaning that we will face no regulatory hurdle when doing regulatory applications. And we are currently working with 3 of our local hospitals to conduct clinical studies here in Singapore, and with AXA, which owns one of the largest healthcare insurance network across Asia, and Innovative Diagnostic, which is part of the largest clinical laboratory chain across Southeast Asia. We are looking at a total addressable market of $5.5 billion and a serviceable addressable market of $147 million. We are aiming to roll out Stratificate as a lab-developed test starting next year to obtain regulatory approval in Singapore and Malaysia in 2022, from the US FDA the following year, and finally in 2024, the rest of the countries. We have a winning team with more than 50 years of medtech experience and 2 IPOs and 4 exits under our belt. I myself started my entrepreneurship training at NOC Bio Valley, and I've previously worked with MP Biomedicals and Fujitsu Laboratories to develop dengue diagnostic tests. Our co-inventor, Professor Mary Ng, was on the WHO Dengue Advisory Committee and is an advisor to the Novartis Institute of Tropical Disease. Our COO, Dr. Keith Chong, is currently heading the APAC commercial marketing team for Merck, while Tiffany is a certified lead auditor who audits for one of the top 15 medical device companies in the US. Lisa and are serial deep tech and medtech entrepreneurs, while Ken is an expert in health economics in Europe. We feel that the social impact prize can significantly contribute to our efforts to roll out Stratificate as a pilot in Southeast Asia next year, and we aim to tap on the DBS Foundation's community and partners to help open doors across Asia. And currently, we are in the midst of closing a bridging round of $500,000 US. So if you would like to help save the lives of dengue patients and alleviate the financial burden of unnecessary hospitalization of families, please support us. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you.
All right, time's up. Judges, Q&A, please start.
Wow, Anthony, I mean, this is real impact here. It saves lives. How are you maximizing that impact? Because you're going for, dengue-infected countries, and I guess you're targeting the public sector hospitals that are most pressed, especially now with COVID as an add-on burden as well to public hospitals. I have two questions. Number one is, how do you sort of zero in onto the high impact locations? Do you have the right kind of help? The second is, what are the risks of this going wrong? Has that happened? Have your tests failed in some cases, and how do you make right those wrongs?
So we are approaching it from different angles. We are right now the easier one for us will be to approach like the private hospitals, even though we always have the perception that private hospitals, they want to earn money and then they will try to hospitalize as many patients as possible. But after we spoke to them, what they told us is that they don't want dengue patients because most of them just take up bed space and then that's it. They will do nothing. They want surgical patients whereby they can spend more, have more spending power per bed. So they maximize their earning potential. That's the sort of like the economics part of thing. For the government side, we are really working with more of like the NGOs and sort of like the Association for Public Health. For one instance, we've signed an MOU with the Mexican Society of Public Health, whereby all the public health professionals are within this society, and then we will reach out to them through the various hospitals and see where's best for us to have our pilots and clinical like validation studies. Yeah, and dengue is a problem. Like, it's not as though people have not tried to solve it. It's more of from the economics point of view, because dengue mainly affects countries in the tropical belt, and these mainly are developing countries. Singapore probably is the only developed country within this particular belt, and our government has actually put in quite a bit of resources, such as attracting Novartis to Singapore to set up their Institute of Tropical Disease. Unfortunately, things didn't go very far, so like we are still in the midst of trying to do this to bring a solution to dengue patients in the region. And yeah, so this particular project actually started from a national level project that's sponsored by our Ministry of Health, and it involves all the clinicians in Singapore, all the research universities in Singapore, and this is a problem statement that's thrown out by our local clinicians.
Anthony, I just want to echo Sushan's comments. This is just very powerful, very important work. I'm glad that you're alive and doing this, really grateful for it. As you alluded to, healthcare is all about the 4 Ps. The patient, the parent, the provider, and the payer. Now, it's very clear from what you've shared, the patient, the parent, the provider, all highly motivated to want to do this. Let's talk about that final P where things always break down, the payer. Who's the payer right now, and who should the payer be in 4 or 5 years at scale?
Yes, so like right now, again, the easiest for us is to go private. We have AXA with us right from the beginning because they've done their sum. So if on average, they were to be able to just reduce hospitalization on average by 2 to 3 days just in Malaysia alone, and 2 to 3% savings of these 2 to 3 days of reduction, that's $6 million worth of savings in terms of reimbursement every year. So we are expecting about 46% of savings if this, like, we push it through 100%. So you can just imagine how much money we can save insurance companies. And for the governments, it's really to maximize whatever limited healthcare resources they have. And for the politicians, they want to avoid political embarrassment. Like for the case of Little Avinash, it's a huge hoo-ha in India. And like the public is coming down hard on the Minister of Health. And for the public hospitals, they have the Hippocratic oath, they want to do good, and then they really want to save as many lives as possible, while at the same time not overstretching their poor professional healthcare workers.
Just as a quick follow-up, Susan, if I may, I think this is very powerful for the large global foundations. Bill and Melinda Gates, Wellcome Trust. I think if you can quantify at a per test basis the money saved, the lives saved, the capacity saved, you'll find tremendous support from the jumbo bracket philanthropies for this.
Thank you very much for the suggestion.
All right, time's up. Thank you so much To our teams and our judges, that was absolutely intense and super inspirational to see how all these teams are trying to make the world a better place. I can still feel my heartbeat in my ears, actually, because that was so incredible. You all did a great job. We are now going to give our judges some time to deliberate over who will be the winner of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. And as they do that, we are very honored now to have DBS Group CEO Piyush Gupta join us to share his thoughts and journey in leading with purpose through a pandemic. And I'm sure many of you have been extremely excited for this segment, and this is also your chance to send him any questions that you might have for him through the Q&A panel. So Piyush, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Nadia. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to all of you. It was actually a good fun to see my friends on the judging panel. Trust Nick Nash to focus in on saying who's going to pay. Don't worry, they're all good friends of mine. All right, you know. Well, let me start by honestly commiserating with all of you young kids, people in universities, starting your life, starting your careers. This pandemic and this time is not an ideal time to be hitting the workforce, to be shaping your lives. In point of fact, I've read some research which suggests that the cohort which came into the workforce and started building out their lives in 2009, 10, 11, the 2-3 years after the global financial crisis, has been the most challenged, has faced some significantly difficult times over the last decade. I guess all of you know, I mean, the scale and severity of this particular crisis in many ways dwarfs what we saw in 08, 09. The economic impact has been huge. Demand destruction has been dramatic. Even the epidemiological outcomes are quite uncertain. So the glass half empty picture is the next decade could be challenging. Certainly the next few years could be challenging indeed. But in many ways, you know, life is always about trying to find the glass half full. To my mind, some of the mega trends that we are seeing actually wind up creating some opportunities as well. Quite clearly, the biggest mega trend we have seen is that of hyper digitalization. You know, McKinsey says 10 years worth of digitalization happened in 1 quarter, and we can see that. We can see that in DBS's own customer base. The number of people who are switching to more digital forms of borrowing, lending, paying, etc. And we're obviously like every other industry. This creates 2 distinct kinds of opportunities. One is on the supply side of the spectrum. With everybody learning to work from home and work from remote, it creates a new set of opportunities to how you can source talent, where you can get your work pool from, how you can learn to collaborate very differently. And frankly, to many startups, it's going to create opportunities which are interesting. How do you get people, you know, who are otherwise homebound to be able to get into the workforce and so on and so forth. The other side of the spectrum is obviously the demand side. People are consuming digital product at an extraordinary high level, and certainly it's true for things like healthcare with telehealth, for education with teleeducation, even agriculture with the ag tech and so on. Now, this obviously gives rise to a whole range of new opportunities in thinking about how you can maximize this new wave of digital consumption as we go forward. A second big trend that we're seeing is the trend of geopolitics. Again, the bad news is it's not good if you wind up in a fractured world, in a bipolar world, in a bipolar technology with a splinter net. On the other hand, in an ironic kind of way, if you do have challenges where global players can't scale easily across different countries, nationalism prevails, then in point of fact, it does create opportunities for smaller, more localized players to be able to find their feet and to be able to create new kinds of opportunities. So in an ironic kind of way, while it might not be good from a macroeconomic standpoint, it might actually be quite good from a startup and new venture and new opportunity standpoint. A third set, mega trend to me is the social trend of social politics. It's quite clear that this crisis is an uneven crisis. It's uneven by country. Rich countries will do better than poor countries. It is uneven by sector. If you're in the cross-border sector, hospitality, travel, retail, tourism, you will be more impacted than if you are servicing domestic demand or healthcare services, or frankly, even work from home services. But the biggest inequality is between the rich and the poor. The people who work for a daily wage, the people who need to go out, the blue-collar workers, daily wage, they're a lot more impacted. Livelihoods are impacted. Unemployment is much higher in that segment. Migrant labor in most places have been struggling. And people who tend to be white-collar stay-at-home have the wherewithal and the resources to deal with this better. Now, of course, that in turn creates an opportunity, frankly, an imperative to think about what you can do differently and better for those who are less privileged, those at the bottom of the pyramid. And I think there is a subset of opportunities that might come out from that. And finally, one of the things that this pandemic does is I think it dials up the focus and attention on the issues around sustainability, whether it's environmental or social, actually governance as well. But some people wonder, they think maybe the world will take its foot off the pedal on climate change and biodiversity. I actually think the reverse is happening. One, people have begun to recognize that tail risk can happen. The pandemic was a tail risk. Well, if a pandemic could happen, then other tail risks can happen. Climate change can happen, water levels can rise. The other thing that's happened is people who also recognize that we as mankind, as civilization, sometimes have to take a lot of short-term pain for long-term upside. Who would have imagined in February that the whole world could come to a standstill and everybody would stay at home for 6 months? Well, we all did it. And we did it because we had a gun to our heads. We didn't have a choice. But what that does tell us is that we might have to take similar belt tightening and severe actions today to be able to make sure we don't run into bigger and more serious challenges related to climate and biodiversity tomorrow. And when you look at the Euro Green Plan for Recovery, you look at Joe Biden's election manifesto, it's quite clear that many governments and many leaderships are beginning to think seriously about putting resources behind the agenda of sustainability and green. So that could be another set of opportunities as well. Now, I think the key thing though, which is going to underlie a lot of what we do, what individuals do, companies do, and countries do, is really anchored around what I call this idea of purpose. Without a doubt, to me, one of the biggest things that will come out of this pandemic is a relentless focus on intent and purpose. Again, over the last few years, since the 2009 crisis, it has actually been getting a lot more attention. This idea of, what are we here for, or what is the intent, what is true north, is got into currency in a lot of debate with a lot of companies. But to my mind, the last few months is going to take it up several notches. And frankly, it's going to be not just about purpose for nations and companies. It starts with purpose for each of us as an individual. Let me actually tell you a story. Early in my tenure as CEO, I was very keen on trying to spend some time trying to collectively discover the soul of DBS, the raison d'etre for DBS, and so on, what we should be about. So we got hold of this company called the Authentic Leadership Institute from Harvard. And they came and spent a couple of days with us trying to work through this. The first exercise they did very early was to get all of us, 20 of us in the room, to take time off and really think hard about our own individual purpose. It was an interesting exercise because while deep in the back of our minds, we have a general sense about what we are trying to achieve. But to really look deep and say, what is my purpose? What am I here for? What really makes me tick? It's an exercise many of us don't do. And frankly, they set the bar a little higher. They said, try and capture it in a short phrase, which says, this is what I'm about. This is what my purpose is. Now, when you start doing that, you have to be razor sharp on being understanding what really makes you tick. What are you about? That same idea of purpose, I think, extends even more to companies. At least, we were born not out of choice. Our parents decided we should be born. But when a company is born out of the thoughts and choice of people getting together, whether it's a partnership or a limited company. Now, which means that when a company is created, there is a rationale, there is a reason for why the company should exist. Knowing clearly and completely what is the relevance of that company, what is the company meant to do, I think is quite important. And if the relevance is limited to, hey, the company is being created to make money, I don't think that will be adequate and sufficient. It's frankly never been adequate and sufficient in history. And I think it will be less adequate and less sufficient as we go forward. The reality is companies are given a legal license. Companies are given a legal entity status only because they are relevant to societies, they're relevant to communities, they solve a customer need, they make some positive impact. And if you're not clear about what is the customer need or the social need or the community need that you're collectively coming together to solve and resolve, society will begin to start questioning why you should exist. So in addition to the regulatory license, I think companies have to earn that social license. And the social license is going to be harder and harder to get. And it is a social license which is going to have to be earned every single day from a relentless focus on why you exist, why you're relevant to community, and why you're relevant to society. A lot of people debate this issue of shareholder capitalism and stakeholder capitalism. I'm not going to go through the details. All of you know the Milton Friedman argument and the stakeholder argument. I just wanted to point out that in my mind, there is no real conflict between shareholder value and stakeholder value. I think the conflict is only one of time frames. Because the minute I'm a shareholder and I want to make sure that my company that I've invested in is there and has the capacity to produce returns consistently over long periods of time, then you find the conflict beginning to disappear. Because the long periods of time becomes important. If I want to have returns over a long period of time, the company must be there for a long period of time. And for the company to be there for a long period of time, it has to be relevant to society for that period of time. Therefore, the conflict is really quite simple. If you are short-term focused and worried about a quarterly return, then yes, there's a conflict between what you need to do in the short term to maximize profits, whereas what you might need to do in the longer term to create true social community impact. But the minute you take a long-term time frame, that conflict very quickly disappears because you need to be able to do the right things in the long term. I think this whole idea of purpose and intent is going to be really important to all the people in the what I call this pandemic generation and going forward. Because I think one of the things which will come out of this pandemic is a clear need to look for people to blame. This is human tendency. So there will be a challenge. People will want to blame rich people. Equally, people will want to try and blame corporates for corporate greed. It's going to be very simple to start categorizing both people and companies into two camps. You're either a hero or you're a villain. How do you come out of the crisis as heroes? It can't be just paying lip service. It cannot be optics. You must be able to demonstrate from what you do that you have a heart, that you have empathy, and that you're relevant. I'm fortunate that at DBS, this whole idea of purpose and intent has been deep rooted in the DNA. Way before I came, frankly, it goes back to when DBS was created. DBS was created as an offshoot from the Economic Development Board with a very express agenda, which is to help in the development of Singapore. And frankly, I was quite stunned when I looked at in the archives at the early days of DBS. In the first decade, the decision-making rubric was never, let's do something because it is profitable. It was always, let's do something because it is good for Singapore. Now, that idea that we want to do things because they're good for nation building is deeply embedded. And then sometime in the late 90s, DBS went and acquired Postal Savings Bank. And that was a bank which is a bank for the man on the streets, the Heartlanders Bank, and came with a tagline which epitomizes the same idea, neighbors first, bankers second. So I'm somewhat privileged to have joined a company 10, 11 years ago, which is already focused on trying to do real things for real people. That's been special. But over the years, we decided that, this idea that we had, that we need to do real things, that we need to think about impact of society, what people today call a double bottom line. We need to think about how we can broad base this, how we can scale this up, how we can get more people to think in a similar way. So some years ago, we created a foundation, And we decided to see how we could create an entity which would help other companies who have this vision of a dual bottom line in their own journeys. We chose social enterprise and social entrepreneurship as as an area that we would support, because these are companies which try to do this. You know, they want to do something which is impactful for society. At the same time, they want to be not to be charities. They want to be self-sustaining. Now, unfortunately, because they're dual bottom line, sometimes they find it harder to attract capital. Our agenda was this: how do we get awareness around these people? How do we create advocacy so we build a whole community around this? How do we help some of these companies both through skill-based participation and support that employees want to do? How do we help them through banking facilities? What can we do to actually give them some financial support and so on? Now, since 2014 when we started this, it's really encouraging. We have obviously touched tens of thousands of social enterprises, but we've actually been able to nurture well over 400 social enterprises with hands-on support. And frankly, we've been able to provide financial grants of over $6 million to about 40 or 50 of these social enterprises over all these years. But it's not just the money. It is the willingness to work with them. So our HR people, our marketing people work with social enterprises and help them in areas that we think we can bring support. In the pandemic, we figured that this was appropriate for us to really double down on this. And so we decided to add an extraordinary $500,000 just to support social enterprises who would have struggled otherwise through these last 6 months. And it's been good. These social enterprises have collectively been able to save some 5,000 jobs. In fact, I believe they've been able to add another 1,500 jobs. And so we feel good about our ability to participate in this process. As a general rule, through the pandemic, we decided very early that we need to do what we can for society at these troubled times. This is not about short-term money making. It is about making impact. Apart from all the stuff we did, which everybody did, we helped our employees in healthcare and work from home. We have customers. Our digital prowesses help to make sure things are convenient for customers. But we actually focused hard on trying to make sure that we were able to create jobs. It seemed to us that creating jobs was the biggest thing we could do. So we made a commitment to hire 2,000 people this year just for the job creation. We figured that a lot of companies, especially and individuals, would find it hard to repay their loans or pay interest for this period. And so we led the charge on actually creating easy repayment terms, moratorium programs, and so on. Now, some of these are going to obviously come back and bite us from a financial, economic standpoint over time. But it's okay. We think that this is what we're intended to do and be. And in the long term, the swings and the roundabouts play out. We need to focus on our purpose, what we think we're about. And I think hopefully we have been able to make a positive impact over this period of time. Maybe with those comments, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions or answers that we might be able to take. So let me go through my iPad and see if I can find. Well, I see a few questions here, and I will. Piyush, for DBS support system change, ecosystem, as we need to address, I can't read. Is the way I can read this question, there's something which comes on top of it to address something of the problems. And just, if I turn it around. Well, I get the broad idea versus helping individual enterprise. So I think we need to do both. I think you always need to help individual enterprise. I think it's very easy to get caught in abstractions. And when you think about ecosystems and macro systems, sometimes in the realm of politics, and sometimes policy changes take long periods of time. So I do think as human beings, you need to have, human beings and companies, you need to have empathy and heart. So I think it helps to be able to actually demonstrate change from the bottom up by helping individual situations, individual companies, and individual people. But I agree with the essence of the question, that at its heart, what we need to be thinking about is systemic change. And how do you drive systemic change at a macro level? I think part of the answers lie in sociopolitics. Part of the answers lie in the realms of trying to think about what is the nature of government and what is the role of government. It just seems to me that through the late 80s, and not just Friedman, but principally Reagan Thatcher, we have gone to a stage where our view of government as being, Reagan said, government is not a solution, government is the problem. We've really taken that to heart. And we've taken that to heart because we've gone completely and wholeheartedly in the direction of a market-driven economy with the belief that the market can regulate everything all the time and regulate it well. I think we've got to go and revisit that thesis. It's not entirely clear to me that markets and market prices always get it right. In fact, for long periods of time, we know they get it wrong because they're not based on fundamentals, they're based on technicals, and they tend to be based on demand-supply impulses. Now, that's, oftentimes they're short-term aberrations. But beyond that, markets often get it wrong because markets need to operate in a perfectly competitive environment. And that's the heart of Economics 101. You assume perfect competition, you assume a clear level playing field. And in reality, those things never happen. You have oligopolies, you don't have perfect competition, you have situations that drive to monopolistic or monopolistic behaviors. Now, to me, the governments get created to be able to ensure that you do have equal opportunities and you create guardrails around society. You go back to the 17th and 18th century when you had the philosophers, the Locks of the world, thinking about what is the role of government, or what is the social contract. It's life, it's liberty, it's ownership of property. But I do think that one part of the social contract is this idea of guardrails and level playing fields. And I do think it's incumbent on governments to play those roles. So at a systemic level, I think we need to really think about that. Do we really need to be out and out market-driven capitalistic, or do we need to put in some guardrails and have a more aggressive public-private partnership construct? If you look around the world today, you have different models. And certainly, even within the Western liberal democracies, the models in Scandinavia or continental Europe are quite different from the models in the US, and particularly the Republican model in the US. The models of a country like Singapore are quite different, where there's it's a very activist government. Now, you could obviously push back and say, you don't want government activism. Activist governments can be regressive and inefficient. But for my own take, if you want to get ecosystem change, I do think we're going to have to rebalance the free market economy with a more activist government. You're going to have to balance that with what I call a whole of government approach, greater participation of civil society, to try and make sure that we understand what it is that we are seeking to create, and then collectively try to create that in as fair a way as we can. So I'm not sure I actually answered what the intent of the question was, but I thought it's a useful opportunity. Oh, okay, good. To be able to talk to something which I think is actually quite dear to my heart. Okay, question. One of the things we often hear about today is learning to fail fast. That's very true for entrepreneurs. Do you have an example of an area of failure that has taught you lessons that prepared you for the future? Well, I'm going to give you an example. It's really, I didn't necessarily fail fast out of choice, but in the internet 1.0 days, year 2000 actually, I decided to quit banking for a year and go set up a .com. So I took my family from Southeast Asia where we were and went back to India, to New Delhi, to set up a .com with the Hindustan Times, which is the second largest media house in the country. And we wanted to create something like a Yahoo lookalike, but with several verticals, including stockbroking and a job search and matrimonials and so on. And point of fact, the ideas were not bad, but timing was terrible because NASDAQ tanked about 6 weeks after we started. And therefore, after 4 or 5 months of searching for new funding and looking at stats and strategic partners, etc., I decided to give up. Fortunately, one thing I learned about fail fast, because I took that decision in the fall of 2000, I was able to place back most of the 100-odd people who had joined me. If it had been 2001, it would have been impossible to find a job. So one of the advantages of failing fast was, you could find alternative options for people. But I decided to come back to banking. Now, when you look back and say, what did I learn from that? I did not, necessarily pivot. I did not create the next startup. However, it taught me one really important thing. And that was, it gave me the freedom, the mental freedom to be willing to take risk. My attitude to risk taking changed significantly. Prior to that, I was used to work like everybody in a multinational company. And my whole agenda for growth was internal career development on the treadmill. How do you build your career? How do you grow? And the capacity to do something unconventional was therefore a little bit limited because the cost of failure was high. After I came back from the .com, both things changed. One, my willingness and ability to take risk had improved dramatically because once you've seen the bottom, there's only one way up from there. But second, my driver for growth and what I wanted to do had also changed. Instead of being focused on the treadmill and trying to grow a career, I was more focused on trying to create impact. And so for the last 20 years, my whole agenda has been, what can I do which I enjoy, but where I can make a difference. So I guess both things were learnings from this, failure that I had in my life. Now, that might not be the exact intent of the question around failing fast. I wish I could give you more real examples in the DBS context. We've often got out of things which don't seem to be working. And we said, fine, let's pivot and exit it. But the natural consequence of that, and therefore did we learn something incremental? I'm sure we did, but nothing that I can draw your attention to right now. All right. Are there any recent books that you're reading that have helped you in thinking about the future? Actually, I'm rereading. And I'm rereading both the Yuval Harari books. I've talked about them before. To my mind, both Sapiens and Homo Deus are the two of the most important books that have been written and I have read in the last decade. Harari in Sapiens goes back in history and he makes a really compelling case for defining why are we who we are? Why did we as a species win out? And what are the pluses and minuses that come with that? At his heart, he's got a very interesting thesis, which when you reflect on it is profound, which is that everything we believe, everything we know is only a story that somebody created. A company is a story. I mean, does DBS exist? Or does it exist just because we all agree it exists and you put some documents around it? Does religion exist, or does it exist only because we made a story and then we all believe the story and so on? And so if you go through and go past the story, it starts raising some profound questions. But the impact of some of this is more relevant as we go forward. In Homo Deus, he starts talking about where is the future? And particularly when you start thinking of artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, robotics, big data, data privacy issues, biogenetics, you begin to start grappling very immediately with some profound and important questions, which is, who are we and what makes us human beings? What's the distinction between us and a robot? Where should we draw the lines between what artificial general intelligence should be allowed to do and what we think should be the domain or the purview of human beings? Harari's books are really well written and they start teasing out some of these really interesting questions. So I recommend them to everybody. I read them 2-3 years ago. And then over the last month, I've fished them out again because I think these issues are getting more and more relevant every day as we go forward. Okay, let's see. on the difference in horizon between shareholder and stakeholders, the corporate machinery only seems to be getting shorter in time frame. How do you propose we slow stretch? So I guess, the corporate machinery is dictated by the investor machinery. So the real question to ask is, how do we ensure that owners of companies, shareholders of companies, are prepared to take a long-term view? Now, there are 2 or 3 different types of owners, and you can see different perspectives when you think about them. So one in Asia is, a lot of owners tend to be family owners. And many of them automatically think of 2nd and 3rd generation and 4th generation. Alibaba and Jack Ma famously said he wanted to make sure Alibaba lived in 3 centuries, the 2000s, 2100s, and 20 whatever. I find that is generally true, that private ownership and family owners tend to take a longer term view because they're concerned about their future generations, and therefore their actions tend to be longer term. Ironically, I think public market and public investors are the ones who take the shortest view. And that's because oftentimes the investors are young portfolio managers and analysts whose own KPIs are measured by benchmarks. How did your investment do in this quarter compared to everybody else, or how did it do in this year? And because the KPIs are done off short-term benchmarks, their orientation tends to be short-term. In fact, sometimes I've found it's actually quite strange. If you see management theory, the agency theory construct has always said, the problem is that shareholders think long-term and management thinks short-term. And therefore, how do you, in fact, that's how shareholder stock options came into being. So the only way to make the management view be aligned with the shareholder view is let's make sure management has, interest in the company. They have skin in the game, and that will get alignment of interest to longer term. Actually, I have found as a manager with my management team that the management team generally tends to think much longer term than many investors. The people who force me to, in my job, to say, hey, what happened in this quarter and why did it go down in the quarter is never the management. It tends to be the public investors. I think there's an intermediate class of investors who actually do this quite well. And those tend to be sovereign wealth funds, private equity investors who generally tend to take a longer term view as opposed to public market investors. So in an ironic kind of way, the fact that a lot of companies are not going public, but staying private and in the realm of private equity, I think is somewhat helpful in changing this short-term orientation to a longer-term orientation. But I think the other thing that is changing, though, is that even in the public market investors, there is increasingly beginning to be a rethink. And as institutions like PRI come up with an ESG construct of environment, social, and governance, it's quite clear that even public market investors are now being pushed to adding things to their frame of reference and to the rubric, which is a lot more than just short-term financial performance. And so I think you're beginning to see the change. But net-net, I think a large part of this change inexorably must be investor-driven. By the way, one other facet of this worth reflecting on. I think what will happen coming out of the pandemic is a much bigger role for governments. I talked earlier about activist government. I think it's a good thing to have activist governments. But you'll also find that governments have put in a lot of money to work in this pandemic. They bailed out airlines, they bailed out SMEs, they bailed out companies. So there's taxpayer money, public money, which has gone towards this. I think on the back of that, the governments will find it is important for them, perhaps again imperative for them, to play a more constructive role and a more active role in trying to think about how this money eventually produces outcomes and returns. And in doing that, I do think they will also take a longer term role. Now, some governments are doing this more constructively than others. Again, sort of link back to the earlier question, how do you make an ecosystem change? In Singapore, as you know, the government has appointed this task force called Emerging Stronger Together task force. I happen to be on the task force. One of the things that the task force is looking at is, how do you actually focus not just on creating new avenues of growth and new industries, but how do you create a new model of participation between public and private sector that allows you to think about longer term outcomes as opposed to shorter term outcomes. So I do think you will start seeing some change even at the government and public sector level. I suspect I'm running out of time. How much time do we have?
10 minutes.
You said 10 minutes, about 5 minutes ago. So let me see what's the next question we can take. Okay. All right, I'll go backwards. Unrelated, but who do you think is going to win the US elections? I got to tell you, I got it wrong the last time. I didn't think Trump could win, and he won. So I'm going to be very careful about hazarding a guess. But I do have to say that with only 30 days to go, and the polls having Biden up by anything from 10 to 16 points, it does look increasingly that it might be a Democratic administration the next time around. But like I said, given what we all saw last time, Trump is a maverick. You can never put anything past him, and he could pull a rabbit out of the hat at the last minute. What keeps you up at night nowadays? Are you concerned about small businesses going under in the economic crisis? Well, so three things up. I talk about, well, four things, if you will. Two I've touched on, so I'll just touch on them and not expand. One is this whole idea about the pluses and minuses of technology. So, like I said, I think technology is generally a tremendous force for good. But I also worry that we collectively as society haven't thought through the unfortunate side effects of the technology revolution we're going through. So when data is ubiquitous and freely available, what does it do to privacy? And how do you decide when use of data is good for civil society and when it is bad? When artificial intelligence and models start running everything, how do you decide, when you got, when it's too much, too much? I worry about the fact that when I was growing up, I used to know 200 phone numbers in my head. Today, I don't even know one. My brain stopped working. I worry about the fact that I used to know and use my head to find directions. Today, Google Map finds the directions for me. And even if my instinct tells me I should go left, but Google Map says go right, I go right. So, we're abdicating our thinking. Now, some of these, or we look at biogenetics, and some of the consequences are fantastic. We could find cures for a lot of stuff. But how do you make sure you don't get to the stage where you're not doing genetic engineering to an extent that we're no longer what we are? So I think those are big picture things. Those worry me. A second set of things that I said do worry me are the sustainability issues. I think the challenges to our planet are really, really severe. And that's the climate-related challenges, the biodiversity-related challenges. Of the 9 planetary boundaries, we have very convincingly exceeded half of them. And so the way we are going, this earth is not going to be habitable. And whether you rely on technology or hope for technology to find the solutions or not, there's no question that we have to take some actions. Similarly, I think our way of society, the ecosystems we created, are creating too much inequity. And with this level of inequity, it is also not sustainable. I think Karl Marx had it right, that at some point in time, if you wind up with extraordinary concentrations of wealth, then without a doubt, the proletariat revolt, and you will find social unrest around the world. So I mean, that worries me. But more specifically, in the context of my job and DBS, there are two things uppermost in my mind. One is what is alluded to over here. I think the economic consequences of this crisis are large, but some of them have been masked. And they've been masked because of the unprecedented amount of fiscal and monetary support that governments have put out. Some $11, $12 trillion of support if you look at both fiscal and monetary. Now that's humongous. And as a consequence of that, what we are doing is kicking the can down the road. So many companies which would have gone under in the short term are just being able to buy time to some unknown future. Now, at some stage, what is a liquidity crisis will become a solvency crisis. And so while some companies will benefit from buying time, many companies will not be able to benefit, and eventually they will have to close. You just defer the problem. to my mind, there is going to be a vast slew of bankruptcies and defaults coming down the pike. And that will be both in the individual sector and in the corporate sector, especially the SMEs. I think many of these defaults and bankruptcies will only be visible in 2021. And when that happens, that obviously will sort of create pain in the financial services industry. So if you remember 08-09, the crisis started in the financial sector. This crisis started in the real sector, but another year or so, you will start it spilling over, seeing it spill over into the financial sector. So how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with that in a way that is sensible and impactful? The obvious thing which many banks are doing, so are we, trying to build up reserves ahead of time. But the other challenge we're going to face is how do you deal with the company when the government programs get over? How do you deal with the company when your next loan is due? Do you push to get your loan? Or do you say, okay, don't pay me back for another year? Now, this is always a big challenge. If you have a fundamental view that this company can't survive, then you're better off actually pulling the loan and letting the company self-destruct, as opposed to continuing to create zombie companies. It's been well known from a macroeconomic standpoint that the zombie companies are really harmful to countries. We've seen that in countries like Japan. So that's certainly not something you want to do. On the other hand, pulling the plug early on everybody is going to create massive negative social impact. So that balance of how do you actually create an exit from what I call the cliff effect in a way that is good for the country, is good for companies, etc., is going to be a challenge. And so that's something that is on my mind. Second thing that's on my mind is the uncertainty around the interest rate environment and the inflation environment. See, like I said again, because of the good news is the central banks pulled out all stops and they eased monetary policy dramatically over the last 6-8 months. And therefore, we have close to zero interest rates in large parts of the world. And obviously, if you're in Europe or in Japan, you have negative interest rates, you already had them. This is good in the short term, and I think it was merited because you wanted to make sure that you curtailed and controlled the amount of damage that was being created. The problem is that nobody understands the long-term impact of zero or negative interest rates. One, you don't understand whether zero negative interest rates are actually good for consumption and investment or not. The theory has always been that lower interest rates mean people borrow more, people consume more. But it's not entirely clear today that if you have negative rates, then do people still want to invest more and save more? Or is it that people start getting so worried and anxious about what is going on that you get actually contrary kind of responses? So you don't know the impact of that. The other thing you don't know is with all of this huge amount of deficit financing which will be monetized onto central bank balance sheets, is this eventually going to be hyperinflationary or not? Macro theory has always taught you this, that if you have a finite pool of physical assets and you create more money, then the price of the assets has to go up. So it has to be inflationary over time. Now, because of the amount of demand and destruction in the short term, there is no sign of inflation. And people would argue you've seen no sign of inflation in Japan and Europe now for 15, 20 years. So this whole hyperinflation looks like unlikely to happen. Nevertheless, it's not clear. It's not impossible that while you see a deflationary environment right now, 2-3 years from now, you do wind up seeing a hyperinflation as this huge amounts of money starts continuing to find a home. So don't know about that either. So as you can see, lots of challenges and lots of things to keep me awake at night. I want to wind up though on an optimistic note. I continue to be optimistic. I told you before, you can look at the glass half empty, you can look at it as half full. I do think in the face of all of these challenges and all of the headwinds we are seeing, there are always opportunities. And I think for anybody who's willing to be nimble, adaptable, keep an open mind, connect the dots, I think the opportunities over the next 5-10 years will also be very significant. Technology, like I said, can be a risk, but technology by and large is a huge asset for the positive. As you think about what are the real problems in society, what are the real problems in the world around us, Technology allows you to rethink the solution frame. It allows you to think about why we do things in a particular way, why we can't do them differently. So my last comments to all of you in the universities, the young startups, this next decade might actually be an incredible opportunity to find the solutions that will make us successful as a people and as a mankind in the next decade. What they call the pandemic generation, I think might wind up having as big a consequence for the future of the planet and the earth as several generations like the baby boomer generation did in their time in the past. Thanks all for giving me your attention, and happy to pass back now to the MC.
Thank you so much for making the time, Piyush, to join us today. I know you have a very, very busy schedule. And now we are almost ready to announce the winner of the People's Choice category, as well as the winner of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. And we've had such a good time hanging out with all of you today that we'd love to hear your feedback on the event as well, which you can give us via the survey in the poll panel. And speaking of feedback, we've heard such an impressive lineup of pitches today that I think before formally announcing the winners, we should do one last little check-in with the judges. So, Siraj, let's start with you. Sure. What was your overall feel of the event?
No, I think this was super energetic. I love the infectious energy from all the teams. I just think the quality of ideas are so high, and the impact that all these teams are going on to make are just going to be super meaningful and impactful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any specific teams that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so I think for me, I think Sampangan, like the magic box, very, very magical. Fauzal, I just wanted to congratulate you and team for coming so far in the finals. And more importantly, I think what was really, really cool was that you guys have actually run pilots and actually deployed the magic box in many places. And you guys are on to solving a very meaningful problem. It's a very tangible one, very visible one in the country that you guys operate in today. And I think this can be a potentially global solution as well for other parts of the world. I think for us, I think we really, really love to see how the team can really supercharge this impact and figure out how to make this magic box solution really, really scale at a very large pace. And I think that's what we encourage the team to go spend some time thinking about more. And if we can achieve that together, I think the impact that you guys will make will be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Siraj. And Nick, how about you? What was your overall feel of today? I was just so impressed. I mean, gosh, if the world had more people like all of the folks that applied and these final four, we wouldn't have 1/10 of the problems that the world has right now. So I'm just really proud of each and every one of you. I've been asked to share a couple of thoughts on Polyb specifically. Let me just jump right into that. And I think what you're doing, Siddharth, at Polyb is just superb. The world is going to need tons and tons of urban farming. It's going to do it above ground and below ground. Eventually there's going to be farming in space. The world's going to need all the different things that you're doing. And as you so rightfully point out, pollination is kind of one of those critical and underappreciated steps that needs someone to master it. I think we'd want to think about helping you for the future, and particularly as you think about your fundraising journey and also the journey of sort of bringing on more supporters into what you do. Here's a couple things to keep in mind. One is, as you know, there are certain kinds of vegetables and plants that need pollination and some that don't. I'm a gardener at home and I'm living through this every day. I think you'd love to be able to share with people, look, it's essential that the world gets the following fruits and vegetables that are X% of consumption, and there's just no solution other than pollination. And you have to argue to people why those are going to be grown inside of urban farms. We as judges could imagine a world where, frankly, the pollination stuff gets grown outdoors and the non-pollination stuff gets grown indoors. Explain to us why that's essential to happen indoors. Explain to us as well why the drone approach is the right way to do it as opposed to a more mechanical approach, maybe just little things that ride up and down the rails of the structure, of the infrastructure, the scaffolding of the operation. But overall, I think you have a very bright future, and particularly in large urban farming clusters like Singapore, I think the need for what you're doing is just totally spot on. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick. And I must say I completely agree with you, especially with COVID, throwing this issue, really into light, right? So, Sushan, any last thoughts from you?
So, we had the toughest time. Nick, you were right. I mean, the three of us trying to agree on finding the winner. I'm surprised that we're still talking to each other. And we had very different takes and very different prisms on each. To us, they're all winners, and all four contestants have done a superb job. I'll talk about Bluffer. And I love the idea of leveraging this sort of microorganism and making, an army and factories of change agents through the smallest microbe. I think that whole concept of scale, speed, size is incredibly innovative. It's fresh. And from what Dr. Lee Teng said, it was clear that they had a path, they had a plan, they had a path, they were clear on the execution from the R&D to the proof of concept, to the plant in Shandong, and this whole journey of fermentation to degradation to solve the world's biggest problem, which is really single-use plastics for the environment. I was trying to understand why you were blue as opposed to green, but I guess, blue for cleaning the ocean, and plastics are really creating...
Sushan, all the good URLs have already been taken.
That could be why too. And so kudos to Bluffer. I think very, very relevant and great scale and speed and problem to solve. So good impact there.
Yeah, and did you want to share anything on Stratificate?
Yes, I mean Stratificate, we thought it was really on time, on theme. COVID, queues in public hospitals, hot weather, ASEAN, a lot of people suffering from dengue in the last few months, a lot of deaths. In fact, we forgot about dengue because of COVID, and it's just brought this back to bear, and the whole relevance of testing, being able to crystallize who needed desperate help and who didn't, releasing capacity, much needed capacity, in especially public hospitals in ASEAN. And especially with villages who are suffering from dengue, I think it's a very relevant and crucial problem to solve. So kudos to the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys think?
Speaking as a non-Singaporean citizen and someone who's only lived here for about 9 years, I was just so proud to see a team based here in Singapore going after a truly global problem. In as much as the company was founded here and is based on some science that was done here, they're talking about patients in India, in Indonesia, in Mexico. This is just incredible. It's a truly global company.
Yeah, and this is an issue that all hospitals worldwide are facing, right? So as you mentioned, Sushan, it's very relevant, isn't it?
Highly relevant.
Yeah, highly pragmatic approach also. I think the roadmap, very, very clear view of Singapore, Malaysia commercialization. But in a 10-year view, I can see this going on to making such a profound impact in the world, like really tangible impact to human lives. So very, very fascinating.
All right, thank you so much, judges, and thank you to the teams as well. I'm sure that they will really, really appreciate this feedback. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. Sushan, over to you to announce our winner.
So congratulations to, drum roll, Sampangan. But Faisal, you are the people's choice, and the public have voted you are their top choice. And as the winner, you will walk away with $25,000 cash prize and access to DBS Foundation's, programs from capacity building to our network and much more. So many, many congratulations to Sampangan. Well done.
Faisal, do you want to say some words now?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I want to dedicate this to my newborn, Sabira. I just hope that we all can create like a more sustainable world in which her generation and the next to live in. My wife and family have been super supportive throughout this whole journey. My dad, who is a crazy scientist that come up with the magic box technology. My co-founders, amazing friends, you know who you are. You know, we will not get this if it's not because of your help. Mentors, and definitely a list of partners. And thank you for the DBS Foundation for being really serious in really trying to support in solving problems that really matters for the world. So yeah, looking forward to be collaborating with everybody.
Thank you so much, Faisal. And now to Sushan to announce our next winner.
So the judges have fought, debated, deliberated, but we landed, right? That's the key thing, is we landed. And I'm
really, really thrilled that we will soon be announcing it. Let's check out this animation first.
Ah, okay.
It's coming, and
okay, wow.
Sushan was so excited.
We deliberated, debated, fought hard, but we finally landed. And I'm pleased to tell you that the winner of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize winner is Stratificate.
Well done.
So many congratulations to Stratificate, to Anthony and your team. You will be walking away with a cash prize of $75,000 Sing dollars and access to DBS Foundation's various capabilities, again, capacity building, our network, advice, and many, many more. So go change the world, Stratificate. Go solve the problems that we have around healthcare, public healthcare, and do the good that you're already doing. Congratulations.
Anthony, go ahead. Give us some words. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to thank the judges for voting for us and believing in our cause, and also the DBS Foundation team who has been supporting us, provide a very strong support for us throughout this whole journey. And of course, the 3 other teams who have also presented today. It's very interesting for us to really step out of the medtech sector and learn about the other impactful work that you guys are doing. Yeah, and this prize, I think, is a great recognition for the Stratificate team, not just to me, but my other co-founders and the other team members generally. The credit goes to them for all their hard work. And also I would like to thank in particular our professor, Professor Mary Ng, who has been for her commitments on studying on the dengue disease itself for the past 30 years at NUS. And last but not least, I really look forward to working closely together with DBS Foundation and of course your community and all the partners across Asia. With that, thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you, Sushan, and everyone. If we could please get the judges and the teams to take a quick group photo. Everyone just look into your cameras, right? And on the count of 3, just smile, all right? Everyone ready? You all look great. 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now officially come to the end of the finals of the DBS Foundation Social Impact Prize. As you can tell, I was extremely excited there to see all your beautiful faces. Now, we are so glad to have all of you here today, and biggest congratulations again to Stratificate as well as Sampangan, Bluffer, and Polyb. You all did such an amazing job. And before you go, please do leave us your feedback on this event. We'd love to hear from you in the survey, in the poll panel. Thank you once again for tuning in with us today. It has been so meaningful spending the afternoon with you. Take care and stay safe.